You're listening to a special presentation from Night of the Living podcast, Zoned Out with Joe and Freddy. Zoned Out is the Twilight Zone revisited. I forgot to say that part, but you figured it out. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great, Freddie. I like that that little quick summary of like, hey, wait a minute, this is actually this.
Just so you know, in case you're like, what? We do this every week here on the feed with Night of the Living podcast, and we want to thank Amy and Andy for allowing us to be here on the same feed as well.
Yeah, right on.
Kick the Can. This episode came out February 9th, 1962. And usually when we have the professor on, he gives us this nice little snapshot of what was going on. And I'm going to be a poor substitute for that level of detail, but I got a nice little snapshot here for you that I think sets up what the world was like on that day a little bit.
I like your summaries, Freddie. They're good.
Hey, thank you. The world was shaped by Cold War still. Cold War tensions. This is good. You're going to hear about this about every week. And up through our childhood in the 80s, because it just keeps it going, baby.
And the impact it had on our parents and
Yeah. There's a trade embargo against Cuba at this point, officially. And then we were preparing for the space race here in the U.S., still neck and neck with Russia at this point. The U.S. prepared for John Glenn's orbit, and the Soviet Union was conducting its first underground nuclear test. So that's how recent that stuff is. It's like
that's wild.
Within, 2 generations, whatever. And on this date, we mentioned last week the peppermint twist was popped up as a successor to the twist that we've been talking about, the song "The Twist."
All you gotta do is change one word, and you got a brand new song. Apparently, no copyright issues.
Yeah, Peppermint Twist Part 1. Now, it came out, and this week, now it's topped the Billboard Hot 100. What? Duke of Earl was on its way up the charts, and the Beatles at this point were still just a local act in Liverpool.
Wow.
Just 4 days earlier, on the 5th, Ringo Starr filled in for Pete Best, because Pete Best was sick at the Cavern Club. And because of that ultimately led to him joining the band and became the foursome we know. The biggest movie at the time was a romantic comedy, Lover Come Back, starring Rock Hudson and Doris Day.
Lover Come Back.
Oh, who did that? Baby Come Back? Who do you remember?
I don't.
Nah.
I'll look it up while you look.
It's a good song. Production, 5th of 8 episodes, directed by Lamont Johnson. We kicked things off with Lamont's work with The Shelter, but most recently he directed One More Pallbearer, which we just talked about a few episodes ago.
By the way, it was the British American rock band Player.
Thank you.
Never heard of them. I mean, I know the song, but anyway.
But now you know.
Back to your recap.
This is the 6th of 7 episodes written by George Clayton Johnson. So we got one more coming, which is I can't remember what the name of that one is, but we've already covered The Four of Us Are Dying, which was the first one that he did, and most recently he wrote Nothing in the Dark, which was that episode with Robert Redford. Nice. He appears in an interview with Mark Zicree on the Blu-ray for this, and he calls this episode, Zicree does, he calls it another one of those great truth episodes like he did about Nothing in the Dark and George Clayton's writing. George Clayton Johnson, that is. His writing, Zicree often talks about how he works with the big truths. Aging, obviously, in this one, death and Nothing in the Dark.
Nice.
And again, Richard P. McDonough is striking again as a mysterious story consultant on this episode. So I would love to know, and I tried to look this up, but I probably didn't do a very good job. But if anyone out there knows like what specifically, what his angle was or how he contributed, I would love to know like what are his fingerprints on this,
Are you a 1960s Hollywood scholar?
Are you a relative of Richard P. McDonough and you have stories? I'm just curious because like I know Serling did that, but maybe the work got too much for him and he was like, I need a second set of eyes on all this stuff. I don't know.
Right.
But it's something it never registered with me in my past viewings of the series until this time around. Cast of characters. We have Charlie's. What's wrong with
Charlie's
me?
Angels?
Charles Whitley or Whitley, right? Whitley. because I thought he said Wiggly at one point.
Charles Wiggly.
He believes he's found the fountain of youth. We'll get to that when Joe gets into the description through an old tin can. This is the second 2 appearances by Ernest Truex, who was Pettit in the salesman character in What You Need, which was a great episode.
It's all these episodes where I'm like, I know I've seen this guy before. What did I see him in?
Yeah, he sold the ironic objects,
the shoes to the guy.
Yeah, and the guy playing his son Barry in this episode is his real son. Or playing Barry is his real name. Sorry, Barry is his son. David is the character he's playing. But yeah, it's cool they did that together.
Nice.
We have Ben Conroy, who is Charles' lifelong friend. This is Russell Collins. He was an actor known for The Enemy Below, Bad Day at Black Rock, and Failsafe. He also went on to be in an episode of The Outer Limits called Don't Open Until Doomsday, which was considered one of their best episodes by a lot of fans of the series. Sunnyvale.
That's a slightly different intro tune. Franz. Welcome to Franz.
Oh. We have the Sunnyvale Superintendent, Cox. This is the first of 2 appearances by John Marley. He's going to come back as Jason in The Old Man in the Cave. John Marley, a veteran actor, gained recognition in the late 1960s for his distinctive appearance and acting talent. He starred in notable films like Faces, Love Story, and The Godfather. He's the fellow who wakes up in the bed with a horse's head, by the way.
That is a super iconic scene.
Yeah. And during rehearsals for that scene in The Godfather, they used a fake horse's head. I just learned researching this episode that when they actually shot it that day, they had a real severed horse's head from a slaughterhouse in New Jersey was used, which, and the blood was not real though, but the head was. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm
that
like,
would definitely get a reaction, wouldn't it?
Yeah. When you're like 1970, when they were filming that, it was probably 71 or whatever. Like, were they still butchering horses in the United States at that point?
Don't know. I don't know.
It's crazy to me.
That's bonkers.
I know that I think in France, do they still eat horse meat? I think it's France.
Know.
Somewhere in Europe, it's still something you can order on a lot of menus. But we have a free tag. This is the first of 3 appearances by Hank Patterson. These are all the people living in the retirement community. The rest of this list. Hank Peterson's going to come back in Ring-a-Ding Girl and Come Wander With Me. But between 1894 and 1897, Hank attempted to work as a serious musician, only to settle for playing piano and traveling vaudeville shows. He worked his way out to California in the 1920s, and here began his film career, followed by long runs on 2 television series, including Gunsmoke. He was on that series. I mean, there's so many episodes of Gunsmoke. I'm surprised we didn't talk a lot about Gunsmoke last week with Rance McGrew, but connections there. But he was also the goat bearded character Fred Ziffel on Green Acres, which is a show. I don't know if you watched that in syndication growing up
as a kid. Yeah.
And then he played that same character, Fred Ziffel, which I didn't know this, but he appears on Beverly Hillbillies as that character and Petticoat Junction. So Amy and I were joking that he's like the Richard Belzer of that era. Like, you remember Munch, the character from Homicide, would just appear on other series back in the 90s.
Yeah. that guy, Richard Belzer. Yeah. Very distinctive look.
Same with this guy. Yeah, they're both they're striking.
By the way, the countries that still eat horse meat, China, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Italy, and Russia. And Italy produces roughly half the horse meat consumed in the European Union. France, Japan, Belgium, Spain, Switzerland, Argentina, Canada, Chile, Mongolia, and Kyrgyzstan all also eat horse meat.
I guess we're in the minority then.
I guess we're gonna, that's a lot of, it's taboo in certain places like the United States, UK, Ireland, Australia, and South Africa. So
because we classify those animals as companion animals, which you're not supposed to eat your friends. Yeah. That's why it's not legal to eat dogs and cats and
interesting
other things. I mean, I don't know if it's enforced, but it's not legal. At least not here. This actor, Hank Patterson, also appeared in 2 1950 science fiction films that involved giant spiders. He was in Tarantula and The Spider. We had
I mean, like if you get in for one, I was in. Well, what qualifies you for this show, Tarantula? Well, I was in the Spider, so
There it is. I've been around them plenty.
And there you go.
We have Aggie. This is Earl Hodgins. He was an actor known for Oregon Trail, the Sagebush Family Trails West, and Heroes of the Alamo. Hodgkins is best remembered for his many roles as fast-talking con men, Medicine Show, Pitchman, Carnival Barkers. He'll go on to interrupt his spiel as these characters to tell kids to get away from him. Like, you bother me, you bother me, boy. That's him. That's him.
You bother me.
Which I didn't realize that was Earl Hodgins. I always attributed that to W.C. Fields.
Yeah. Get away from me, kid. You bother me.
Yeah, but apparently it's attributed to Earl Hodgins, at least in my research. That that bit of him not wanting kids to be around him. Maybe he's on a list. In addition to his character roles in films, he lent his voice uncredited to several Porky Pig cartoons, including Porky's Garden, Get Rich Quick Porky, and then in his huckster roles, he was the village smithy narrator. Blah blah blah.
I love that village smithy.
Mrs. Summers. This is the second of 3 appearances by Marjorie Bennett, who was in The Chaser, the episode that is very similar to Obsession, where a man gets his wish for love granted, but with a catch. Also in No Time Like the Past, which we have not gotten to yet. Yeah. Marjorie Bennett was an Australian actress who worked in the UK and US. She began her career in silent films and resumed it in 1946. The year my mom was born. Becoming a character actress in the 1950s, Bennett retired in 1980 due to poor health and passed away in 1982. Charlie Chaplin's landlady. She played that character in Limelight. I know you're a Chaplin fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I haven't watched a bunch of his stuff, but just some of the physical acting and all that. And
this is like a sound picture he did, like after the silent era.
Limelight. Yeah, that's a huge thing. By the way, if you've seen the Minions and Monsters movie, first off, I'm sorry. It wasn't terrible, but it's kind of cute. The beginning of that has a lot of old Hollywood references that are kind of fun. So it's not terrible, but it's a Minions movie. It's what it is.
You got to give something to the parents.
Yeah. There was a lot of, and it was funny because I was leaving the theater with my kids, and there was another dad there explaining to his kids, like, okay, well, remember the scene when he's doing this? Well, that was actually this old TV show. We should watch that.
We got that from Looney Tunes, I think, growing up. Like, all the movie references, like Grapes of Wrath and stuff.
It's the only reason I know any classical music, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Is Looney Tunes. It's good stuff.
Cartoons were undervalued at points. I think we get it now. I think the culture really appreciates animation. There's so much of it, but I feel like in the 60s, it was really mainly for kids at that point.
That kid stuff. It's like, no, smart stuff.
Let's see here. We were talking Marjorie Bennett. She also was in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. She was Dahlia Flagg, and she was the voice of Duchess in 101 Dalmatians.
Huh.
Mrs. Densley. We're almost done with this cast. Last week's intro was even longer than this, but Mrs. Densley is Lenore Shanewise. She was an actress with a very brief career. She played the older version of Mary Lincoln and several other roles for Matinee Theater, which was a 50s anthology show. She was in one episode of The Munsters in 1964, and that's about it. Nice. Mrs. Wister is Anne O'Neill. She was an actress known for Gun Crazy, The Bishop's Wife, and Borrowed Trouble. And then finally, we have Carlson, second of 2 appearances by Bert Mustin, who I think is an adorable old man. He played a character named Bert. We were talking about guys who play characters with the same name.
When you see this guy, he's the super bald guy who looks really old, but he's got one of those faces. It's kind of long, and he's probably looked like an old guy his whole life,
Yeah, he's one of the down on his luck guys in Night of the Meek, the Christmas episode with Art Carney. Yeah. Bert Mustin, he was a salesman before he transitioned into show business in 1921. Appeared in numerous films and TV shows. He retired in 1975 after filming an episode of Phyllis. where his character married Mother Dexter, played by Judith Lowry. And something else I forgot about this episode, just Spielberg directed the segment for Twilight Zone, the movie in 83. I'd forgotten that was his segment, but it makes sense.
I didn't know Spielberg like did his own segment. That's cool.
Yeah.
It makes sense that, yeah, like you said, because that if you see this is, it's interesting how this led to that, because Spielberg's version is much more like nuanced, and I think it still hits all the emotional cues that this one does. But oh, it's so good. I really like the movie, and it's even more sad, and it's even more poignant, I think. Good old Spielberg. I don't want to know anything bad about him, even if there is.
Right, I don't think there is.
I'm not going to deny it. I'm going to accept it, but
he was a Cincinnati boy back for a while there in the 40s.
For real?
Maybe early 50s. Yeah, he lived here.
Nice.
And there's a mention of the Radio Free Europe at the close of this episode as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
To fight communism. I was going to reference that. It's so funny. All right. Well, should we get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So the show opens on a large house, and it cranes down to a sign reading Sunnyvale Rest Home for the Aged. It's 476 Tranquility Lane, which has all the earmarks of a old people location. And we see lots of old people there's one guy looks a little bit like Albert Einstein or a colonel or something. He's got a really interesting look, but he's not even in the episode, other than walking around. Doesn't talk. So they see people. Actually, I'll note something before that. You see a close-up of somebody like kind of scratching at their own hand in a wheelchair, which is kind of like, ooh. It gave the idea that this is not super pleasant place necessarily. It's not bad, but it's like, it's kind of like everyone's just sitting or standing or doing nothing.
It's an old folks home.
It is. It's an old folks home where they're not doing a whole lot of anything. Almost an institution. And we see an older man looks like pretty spry compared to these other folks. And he's kind of creeping down the stairs. He's got a suit on and a suitcase, and he's kind of carrying his hat. And a nurse sees him kind of coming around as he's coming down the stairs, and he kind of stops and turns around, pretends to go back up until she walks away, and then he finishes coming down the stairs, and he gets down to the bottom of the stairs and looks around and kind of not scoffs at the old people in the room, but kind of like, oh, what a waste, looking around at him. And then speaks to everybody in the room, is like, my son is coming to get me. Goodbye. And then he kind of leaves and shakes hands with a few people on the porch as he goes out, and we see a car pull up with a younger man, and that spry old man kind of gets immediately into the car, and the older folks on the porch kind of shuffle over to see what's happening, because apparently people don't come to visit them that often, which, even if they're not your favorite people, probably good to go visit your elders, folks. They're probably very lonely if they live in one of these places.
Especially
Maybe
back
not.
then.
Yeah, especially back then.
They didn't believe in enrichment in this era of old folks home. They believed in limited stimulation, I think.
Yeah, which you hear it echoed by a couple of the folks in this episode too. So then the car pulls away a short distance and then stops. And in the background, like sometimes in the foreground, sometimes in the background, you can see there's a bunch of kids kind of playing around, playing kick the can. And all the older folks are like focusing on the car and seeing like, okay, what's going on there? Because the car has stopped now. And we see a brief shot of the man in the car, this spry older man, looking over at this younger man in the driver's seat. And it's kind of got a look of a little bit disappointment maybe. And the younger man is kind of looking down. And again, it clips through a few other shots. We see more of the older folks kind of being like, what's going on? And then we clip back to the car, and the younger man says, I didn't say I'm coming to get you, Dad. I said I'd come and we'd talk about it. And we see a few more shots of the kids playing and the older folks on the porch watching the car. And then you hear the car's engine start again. And the spry old man is kind of waving goodbye, kind of half-heartedly, like, okay, well, see you later, I guess, then. And the car drives off, and the old folks kind of look at him, and one of them kind of chuckles, and another one is kind of disappointed, like, oh, I'm sorry, the kind of empathy. And the old man looks dejected, and he kind of makes his way over. He starts walking over. He sees this can over by a tree, and there's kids running around still and playing, and he slowly makes his way over to it and picks it up. And this kid runs down. And he goes, "Hey, mister, that's our can. We're playing." The guy just pays no attention, doesn't even look at him, just ignores him. And he's a little less spry now. He's kind of moving slow and ignores the boy and walks over to a tree and kind of sits underneath it, looking wistfully at the can, and then off in the distance, and we hear Mr. Serling's voice in the background.
Real quick before you get
yeah.
into them, I just wanted to mention that shot of where it's kind of from the porch of the house and you see the kids just pour over the hill.
Yeah.
It struck me as like just one of the best shots maybe in the whole series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful, like, it's really cool because you see the foreground and the background and like everything kind of come together.
Yeah.
And it's almost like if we got really, digest or divided up or cut up this episode into moments, the way you see them come over the hill is almost like a flowing over, like almost like a fountain of youth, which we'll get to later. But yeah, the music in this has got the right cues, the moments. It's a really beautiful and poignant episode. And so these kids kind of flow out of nowhere, seemingly, and they're playing along, and he looks off wistfully, and then we hear Mr. Serling come on, and he comes out of the woods, which is kind of cute too. Sunnyvale Rest, home for the aged, a dying place, and a common children's game called Kick the Can, that will shortly become a refuge for a man who knows he will die in this world if he doesn't escape into the Twilight Zone. So when we return, the man is now looking out the window at the kids playing below. And it's interesting, this shot, it wasn't clear to me if this shot was actually what it looked like or if it was a screen imposed on another screen. I kind of think it's the latter because they did it really well, but there's just something about it that looks a little bit like, oh, maybe they...
A composite?
A composite, yeah. And I wonder because obviously they're not necessarily in that house, right, shooting the scene. So yeah, I think it probably was a composite, but they did a really great job with it. And he's listening to kids playing outside, and he still has the can that he picked up. So presumably the kids found another can somewhere else. And I'm like, that old man stole our can. And another man comes into the room and is looking out the window himself and kind of complains about the kids who they're not supposed to be playing on the grounds. And the spry older man asks, well, they're not hurting anyone. The children, they're not hurting anyone. And the complaining man, who we find out is named Ben later, says, old people need their rest. Let them play somewhere else. They've got playgrounds. They've got homes. And
it's like a more playful version of the Dickens Scrooge. Aren't there prisons enough?
Right.
Yeah, he's like, aren't there enough playgrounds?
Yeah. And then there's a line. The younger man, we find out is named Charles. He goes, well, it's the grass, Ben. Kids can't resist going where the grass is.
Girls, same.
And I thought that was a charming line. And then I was like, okay, was that kind of a joke from Serling or whoever wrote it? Like, Ben, kids can't resist where that grass is.
Yeah, you think the counterculture, it was a wink at them?
I may have been, you know what I mean? Like maybe a little bit of a, we know kids can't resist that grass. So anyway, Ben then asks Charles what's wrong, and Charles is, he's still holding that can, and Charles claims it's nothing is wrong. And Ben's like, your own son turned against you. He's very much like a Squidward. And Charles says, well, he's got a lot of problems. He's got a small house and a second baby on the way. And he says, it was foolish of me to think that I could move in with him. He's got too much going on. And the cynic part of me was thinking, oh, he's got a house, huh? Huh, must be nice, to have a house. Because, if anybody can afford those these days, even a small one. Anyway, no, but I'll skip over that. Anyway, Ben goes to complain at the window again about the kids who, again, we've heard playing all this time in the background, which is another cool feature of this episode, the sounds. And Charlie kind of delights the fact that the kids are playing kick the can. He's like, it's in their blood. It's like statues and hide and seek, a special summer ritual. And he turns to Ben. He asks him, have you ever stopped to think of the fact that the minute kids stop playing games, they begin to grow old? And he's like, I wonder if the game is what keeps them young. And he says, well, you don't believe in magic, do you, Ben? But there was a time that you did. Since they've known each other from the time they were kids. He said, when we would walk, we'd split going around a lamppost, and we'd say bread and butter, which I think is an old superstition. It's kind of like certain stuff. Like I never did that one as a kid, but then he says, when you lose your teeth, you put them under your pillow for the tooth fairy. Just kind of, it's like encouraging that magic of wonder, of mystery, of maybe it's magic. And so he asked what changed him. He's like, was it time or was it something else? And Ben's like, I grew up. That's all. Everybody gets older. And Charles is like looking off in the distance saying, maybe there are people who stay young. Maybe they know a secret they keep from the rest of us. And it's very charming, but it's just a tiny bit creepy. But like, maybe there's a secret they keep, but mostly it's just very cute. And Ben's like, Charles, like, stop it. And Charles suggests that maybe there's a fountain of youth. Maybe it's not a fountain at all, but instead it's a way of looking at things, a way of thinking. And Ben tells him, like, stop it. And tells Charles he's an old man whose youth has been gone for 60 years. And then clearly he feels bad for like snapping at him. And he's like, look, I mean to say you've lived a full life. You shouldn't go sloppy on it now and spoil it by acting like a nut. And I was like, spoil it? Like it was very much that kind of old man language. Like, don't ruin your, I don't know,
your dying years.
Yeah, well, like what does he? Come on, don't go sloppy on it now. Like, be a man.
The amount of resistance that he gets is a little silly, but it has to be there for the conflict in the story. But like, you're like, I don't think what he's suggesting is so crazy.
I don't think we do, but I think probably. I mean, I remember hanging out when I was a kid with more of the old timers of that generation, and a lot of them were real kind of serious like that, and kind of patriarchal, like, well, be a man, talk about guy things. And I'm like, I like reading comic books and watching cartoons, and they're like, that's kid stuff, and I'm like, have you read my cartoons or watched my cartoons? Have you read these comics? They're awesome. They're like engaging stories and stuff.
Right. It's when we got into Westerns last week.
Yeah.
When we were talking about Rance McGrew and how there was a time when Westerns were for kids.
Exactly.
And now they're sophisticated stories, more so now. And I feel like those same old men, they want stuff that grew with them. You know what I mean? Like the ones who believe in the hard delineation between life phases, like childhood, adolescence, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like some people believe there are hard rules there.
And I think that's such a, to me, in my mind, and again, it could be seen as like a pragmatism, but also it's like, but why? I mean, I really identify with Charlie in this, or Charles in this, in that he's like, why do we have to keep thinking? Why do we have to be old? Why do we have to make ourselves old in the way we think and like change this? And there's physical aspects as I've gotten older too, but it really is. It's about your mindset for all that stuff.
I blame industrialization for all of it. Because like,
really?
I do. Well, I think like when we went from, you think about prehistoric people and early civilizations, like where you hunt, gathered, that nighttime was for story time.
Yeah.
Around the fire, and you were up again at dawn, whatever. But they would have those rites of passage then, like in those times where you were an adult at a certain age, but once you went through some sort of ritual, you became an adult. But and you left childish things behind in that respect. But industrialization, I think, made it where if you're an adult, you should be focused on that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
focused on the societal aspect of it and not like the freedom aspect of doing what you want. You know,
Yeah.
it's like sacrificing for it's an expectation to kind of sacrifice for the good of the
Of the tribe,
changing of
whatever.
civilization. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's all tied up in that.
It's funny you mentioned that because I, in doing some of the notes on this the other night, I watched a video that just popped up in my feed that was about the origins of Social Security, and it was talking about how in 1930 the average person, the average working person, had a life expectancy, worked basically, and when the retirement age was like 61 or whatever it was then, and that the no one 95% of people did not have any sort of a pension or a savings or anything, and so the expectation was with a life expectancy of 61 that you would work until you died. You would die on the job or you would die, shortly after, which is really interesting in that she was suggesting that, when people talk about how, economists and such talk about how we've got a problem in that people are surviving longer, she's like, I think this was kind of the point. You provide this so that people have something to look forward to, that they actually can retire and live out the last of their days without having to work until death. And just how different that is and how different the perception of it has been, that it's an expectation now and
And it's becoming an expectation again.
Yeah. Well, and
as fewer people can retire.
Right, exactly. That it was expected that people would work till death, and now it's kind of happening again. Whereas, the whole point of Social Security was to give people an opportunity to say, you've worked your piece, you've done what you needed to, now you get to enjoy, a little time with everything that you've put that work in for. So that all kind of connects together in my brain with all of this, is this kind of like idea that maybe what we've got right now, not right now as in like working to death, but the idea of taking advantage of that Social Security, advantage of that all the work you put in over the years, really it was the intention, and that you can become more childlike, you can engage in that piece of reflecting back and share that wisdom with the young people,
because you finally have the bandwidth to do it.
Yeah,
and even if it's just for 2 or 3 generations, might have had that, and we don't know that that's going to be the case going forward with society or not.
Right. My partner's mom is just turned 80, and it's something like she went to Australia, came back. She jumps, she's with my partner's son, who's like 7.5 now, and we got videos of them jumping off the back of a boat into the water, and she's living, like she is totally living. And it's, again, her body has limitations and such, but she's like enjoying every moment of it. And I really thought of her and my own mom when I was watching this episode, of like, it really is a mindset. It is so much that I don't want to fall into this idea that I'm too old for this or I'm too whatever for that. It's like, do you want to do it? Give it a shot. Like, why not? What do you got to lose? I don't,
Everything's a construct anyway, right?
Right, exactly. It's so much the mindset. So anyway, all that digression to say that, Ben is railing at Charlie and feels bad and says, look, you've had a full life. Don't go sloppy now and spoil it like a nut. And Charlie's unfazed. He's like, but it's all so clear. It makes sense. Can't you see it, Ben? He's like, has this real clarity with the can, understanding, thinking through this, the mindset piece of it. And he kind of walks off. In the next scene, we see Ben talking to the house's superintendent, like basically the house. I don't know if he's a doctor or whatever, but he's the one who kind of manages the house that all these folks live in. And he says he's worried that Charles acts like he feels he doesn't know Charles at all when he acts like this. And Mr. Cox is like, well, I'm glad you were right to come to me, and gives another example of another resident who tried to light off some firecrackers. He could have hurt himself. That infantilization of older folks, and which this will come back later. In the meantime, Charles is like being playful, and like at one point he just kind of pushes a wheelchair across the room towards Ben and Mr. Cox, and then leaves the room. He's just acting silly and having fun. And he goes outside on the porch, and all the other guys, there's one other guy who's like sleeping with his head back, and he's like, oh, passes by him. And another guy's like kind of mean mugging at him. And Charles leans over and goes, yeah, and sticks his tongue out. I was like, oh, that's so cute. It's just funny. Nothing bad, just kind of, yeah. And then he's like, what happened to you guys? He's like, don't you remember going hunting for frogs and playing and running around? And he's like, and like playing in the sprinkler? And he's like, the sprinkler,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so he sees a sprinkler on the lawn. He goes out there and he's like, I think I'll help myself. He's fully dressed, goes out there, starts running around in the sprinkler, and all the other old folks are like, what is he? Oh my goodness, what is he?
Yeah.
Oh,
In the 80s, they would have gotten out the wet banana or the slip and
Right.
slide,
yeah,
and it would have turned into a montage at this point.
with the wacky arm waving
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Anyway, he's just laughing, running around in the sprinklers, having a great time, smiling, being goofy, and Ben and Mr. Cox come out and they're like, get him inside, dry him off. He's gonna, this is terrible. And it's like, what? Mr. Cox thinks he's going senile, and he's like, you know what? We need to put him in isolation and under observation. And Ben's like, that'll kill him, And he gets it. He gets that. He doesn't know that. He knows that he doesn't understand what Charles is going through, or doesn't identify with it, but he knows that putting him in isolation, separate from everyone else, is going to be detrimental to him. And when he says that'll kill him, then we get to a commercial break. And so after that, they come back and we see that Ben is in like another room in their bedroom, and he's clearly has just told Charles that they're going to put him in isolation because they think he's going senile. And Charles gets really upset, and he's like, senile? He's like, I don't want to sit here with a nurse taking my pulse, at once every hour to make sure I'm alive. Forget it. I'm not going to do that. And Ben's like, look, you have to act sedate, otherwise, you're acting crazy, and they're going to keep treating you like this if you keep doing that. He's like, use your head. And Charles goes, He kind of puts his hand on his fist like he's thinking hard like a kid would do, and he goes, maybe you're right. And Ben goes, well, finally, he walks off. And Charles is thinking hard. He looks over at the can on his nightstand, and he's like, got an idea. So then we clip to that night, and Charles wakes up, and he starts waking up some of the other residents, and he's like, hey, go get the girls, or all the ladies, or something. I can't remember how he says it. The women, which is probably most appropriate, and says, gather them all together, and we're going to meet, in here. And so you see a little montage of all the old folks. One guy wakes up. He's like, what is it? Fire? And he's like, no, just come in this room. So they all get in the room, and they start talking about this. And they're like, what is going on? What are you talking about? And Charles is like, look, remember how you used to make the magic work? You remember sneaking out on nights like this? And he's kind of this weather, and it's like, that warm weather. And it was funny as he's talking about this. I'm remembering as a kid when they would have a warm summer night, where it's clear and there's not a lot of wind. It's just perfect out. And you can just go out and play outside. And I remember doing that as a kid and just playing in a neighborhood. Even if it wasn't my neighborhood, it was like just whatever,
We're having that weather right now.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, like just kind of that summertime, just running around and being kids. And they start fondly remembering how they used to play kick the can. And one of them was like, I used to be the fastest one. I was never it, And they remember running around. A couple of the women were like, I miss the running. I love the running. And another woman's like, yeah, me too. And he says, well, we can't run far or fast. He says, but we can move and there are trees and bushes. Maybe if the hunted are handicapped, so is the hunter. Like, we could all play this. We can still play this. And he suggests that this game is the secret of youth. And I really love this moment where he gives this kind of this soliloquy, goes to the window and he's like, look, think, feel. Here, hold it. And he hands the can to a woman who's kind of been protesting a little bit more. He's like, doesn't that wake some sleeping part of you? And he hears the children playing in the distance. He goes, listen. And you hear the kids yelling and playing and laughing. He goes, can't you hear it? Summer, grass, run, jump, youth, wake up. He goes, oh, this is your last chance. I can't play kick the can alone. And it's really like a beautiful moment where he's just like, he's almost brought to tears. And you see the reactions on the clip to reactions, close-ups of the older people's faces, like, oh, we get it. Like, this is just like, we should give this a shot, He's so into it that he's inspiring all the rest of them. And so they kind of gather together and they start formulating a plan. And then we fade out and we next see Charles waking up Ben. And he's like, Ben, hey, he's telling him what they're going to do. And Ben's just refusing, and Ben's like, no, what are you talking about? And Charlie's like, you know what, Ben, you're afraid. You're afraid of a new idea. You're afraid to look silly. You're afraid to make a mistake, which I think a lot of older folks, a lot of men in general, again, especially our age, have felt that way, and the older generations. And then he said, Ben, you decided you were an old man, and that's what made you old. And Ben protests. He's like, I am old, and so are you, and our bones are old, and they'll break if you try and run with them. It's like our lungs and our bodies are old, and they're used up, worn out by a lifetime.
Did you want to cut to Adam Sandler being like, he's old balls?
It was the moment in, what was it, Happy Gilmore, where it's like, you can't do this to my grandma. She's old. I mean, just look at her. I mean, she's old. Yeah. And so Ben tells Charlie to sit down. He's like, Charles, sit down, trying to get him to stop. And Charles like, I can't. He goes, I have to find out. He goes, I know there's magic in the world. And he says, when I met Mary and kissed her the first time, that was magic. When my son was born, that was magic. And he said, and friendship is magic. And, maybe kick the can is the greatest magic of all. And Ben just doesn't respond. And so Charles says, okay, I'll do it without you, Ben. And he leaves. And a few moments later, he's literally out in the hallway, and he kind of motions to one of the other older folks, and they signal somebody else. And one fella has firecrackers, and he lights them, and he tosses them out the window. So clearly that was the guy who had gotten the firecrackers confiscated before. And I love it. He lights them, and he kind of holds it there, and he looks at him for a second, and then he's like, ooh, and tosses them out. It's pretty cute. And so the firecrackers go off, and the nurse is like, Dr. Cox or whatever, or Mr. Cox.
Dr. Cox.
Yeah. And so they run out, and the nurse runs out, and then all the grown-ups sneak downstairs, and Ben comes down as well, but he goes to alert Mr. Cox as to what the other residents are planning. He's like, they're going to do kick the can. They're going to hurt themselves, and he's so worried about them. And you can hear the other residents kind of starting to laugh and play, and they're starting to count down in their adult voices, and they're like, they're getting into it. It's really cute just to hear their voices in the background. And then Mr. Cox wakes up, kind of puts on a robe, and they go running outside to get them. And by the time they get outside, they're running alongside the house along this porch. You hear the voices change to children's voices saying the same things, and you see just in the front of the frame, this is some of the great shots in this episode. You see the front of the frame as the two are running up the porch, these kids run by, right? And you get just little glimpses of them as they run by, and they run into the woods, and they're clearly counting and hiding as he's doing counting for kick the can. And Mr. Cox is like, oh, maybe you took him around about around the back of the house. Here, I'll go check it out. And he runs off, and Ben recognizes that the kid who's counting is Charlie, and he's young. He's like, Charlie, it's me, Benny. So he's not saying Ben and Charles. It's just such a sweet moment, but it's so sad. He's like, it's me, Benny. Is it you? Is it you, Charles? You really did it work? Kind of like, hey, what's going on? And Charlie acts like he doesn't recognize him. It's interesting the way they play this, that he's apparently so young that he doesn't remember this old man,
or just doesn't recognize him because he's old.
Right, exactly. And I think Spielberg did a really good job with this in the movie version, but even in this, he doesn't recognize him, and he's like, he just kind of turns around and runs off, and he's like, Benny, he's like, take me with you, and he's clearly like regretting his decision, and Mr. Cox comes running up, and he's like, oh, I think maybe he took him down by the dock or something like that, and he runs off in that direction, and Ben like comes to the conclusion. He realizes, he's like, no, he's like, oh, and he goes and picks up the can, and he goes, you can look wherever you want, Mr. Cox, you're not going to find them. And he slowly starts walking towards the front steps of the house, and the children have all run off, and they're you can hear them playing in the background, Ollie Ollie Oxen Free and all this different stuff, and they start to pan out as Ben is walking towards the stairs, just kind of with his head hung low, and they say, Sunnyvale Rest, a dying place for ancient people who have forgotten the fragile magic of youth. A dying place for those who have forgotten that childhood, maturity, and old age are curiously intertwined and not separate. A dying place for those who have grown too stiff in their thinking to visit the Twilight Zone.
I love this episode. I think it's one of the best in the series.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Especially that moment. And because I've seen the movie version, this was as new to me to see the original. I love what was done with the movie version, but this even in itself is very poignant in that, like you said, with the shots of the kids pouring over the side of that, talking about the Fountain of Youth, the moments of changing the old folks into young folks, and the voices changing, and seeing that spry, like that energy that they have, in their enthusiasm once they have someone engaging it, right? Somebody's bringing that out. And that's really, think about that. There's so many kind of metaphoric or symbolic connections there, where the one kid being the one who's inviting all the rest of them to play, right? And if you think about a group of kids who don't know each other, usually you have one person who's kind of brave enough to be like, hey, do you want to play? And then once kids warm up with that, then they're all of a sudden they're playing, and then pretty soon they're best friends, and then that's how it all happens. And here he's the old man who's saying, hey, do you want to play? I think we can play together. And it's just, I don't know, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. It's what friendship is all about. It's how it starts. Yeah.
It really is. It's that return to youth, and then they go and play, and I feel so bad, especially again in the movie version with what happens in that. So I won't spoil it, but it's a similar story, obviously, but it's just this idea of reclaiming that youth, which again I think is totally a mindset. I mean, I think your bodies get older, and they fail us some, but it's not like they make us unable to. If we decide we're old, we're old.
Society's just changed so much when it comes to games in general, just playing games, because now it's so mainstream for a middle-aged person to go put in their work day. They work 10 hours, they work their ass off, and when they come home, they play a video game, sometimes socially with other people and sometimes alone. But it's still something that when we were younger, it was considered kind of weird if an adult were playing a video game. It was out of the ordinary usually.
Right.
And now it's very much mainstream. So I don't know if the same sentiment applies. You know what I mean? I think adults bring their adult things along with them sometimes and make the games more serious. And I just, it's interesting to me because I don't think any kids play kick the can anymore, right? Do you know?
I can't even tell you what the rules are. I have to look it up sometime because I'm I have no idea.
I thought it was keep it moving, and that was it.
Yeah, I don't know.
But we played it as a kid. But I think how we played was it wasn't always a can. It was kick whatever's in the street, whatever litter you have in the street.
I just had this terrible image of like a raccoon or something.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Be like, kick the OE 40 bottle, whatever, you know.
Right.
But for us, it was always just whatever, keeping it moving, kind of like a beach ball type of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
almost like a hacky sack or something.
Yeah. So you're just constantly moving.
Yeah, I'm going to Gen Con next week. And it's for those who aren't familiar, it's a role-playing game convention, but it has grown to the point where it's 70,000 people that descend on Indianapolis over like 4 days. And it's all people playing games. It's all about games. It's all about playing together and all that creativity. And it's almost exclusively adults. There's lots of, I won't say there's tons of kids. I'd say maybe 5% kids, but most of it's, these adults who really still find that youth and engagement with games. And I don't know, it's a beautiful thing.
Went when I was 16, I think 15 or 16, we drove from Cincinnati to, back then it was in Milwaukee, and Gen Con. And it was that first one was one of the best experiences of my entire life to that point. It was so great to meet all those people who were into the same thing that you were into and who were much older, mostly still, even then, where we were playing games with people in their 40s and 50s and stuff, and not really, there was no, noticeable barrier there. Like they treated us like kids or anything. So it was like Gen Con is, I haven't been probably in 10 years or so, at least. I'd love to go back. It's such a cool experience.
It's one of those things where it's kind of like, you're still going to have some gatekeepers and stuff, but that's a much, much reduced presence from what I imagine it used to be.
Definitely. Because they all make games they want to sell now too.
Right. Well, and the gender disparity is much less now also. And there's also a lot of stuff that especially the role-playing community has put in place to make it a safer and more comfortable thing. There's a thing called an X card system. I signed up for several of these like games we're going to play, just an individual adventure or something. It's like 4 hours long. And so there's a thing they call the X card system where basically at any point, if you are uncomfortable with something they're bringing up, there's something they're bringing up, a topic that's uncomfortable or whatever, you can hold up a card that's got an X on it, essentially. And the game master will just go, oh, we're going to rewind that part. We're going to redo it. And they just take a totally different segment, and essentially retell that story so that the story itself changes. And you don't have to explain it. You don't have to say why, And of course that could lead to some changes, but that's the nature of a role-playing game like that, where it's just a story, right? So you're just redirecting the story to go another direction that might be more comfortable. Some people will go, oh, well, why would you have to, just because one person doesn't like it? It's like,
it's
no,
the trick of mixed company. Yeah,
exactly. It's embracing the diversity of the group to make sure that everybody gets to enjoy that experience. I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's challenging. You have to have some talent to be able to redirect that. But I think those who do, and those people who are doing it, are interested enough to want to be inclusive in that space. So if you've ever considered role playing, this Gen Con is it's like a deep dive right off the bat. But there's board games, there's card games, there's everything. They have a whole like convention center full of stuff for sale, card games and board games and kids games and all kinds of stuff. But then they have art, and they have like people playing music, and I mean it's just so cool, and it's really an inclusive atmosphere. So I encourage anybody who's interested to, I don't know, just go to your local gaming place or make it to Gen Con.
If you can make it to Gen Con, it's getting more expensive. People
it is.
like me are getting priced out of even doing it at all, because like the cost for a weekend pass in a hotel, you have to book like a year in advance.
Yeah.
Did you do a hotel for your trip?
I did. Actually, I do a side thing. Normally the hotels get priced out so quick. I just book it like a year in advance, and I cheat a little bit because I use points for a hotel.
Yeah.
So I get it pretty easy. But we should talk sometime about making a trip out there together. It would be fun.
Oh, that would be fun.
So
count me in.
Awesome. So next week we've got a piano in the house.
Yeah.
And I love when Serling refers to this. He says, now there are pianos and pianos. It's a little bit like his, now there are jokes and there are jokes from, One More Pallbearer. But he repeats himself a little bit. But he does that and talks about how that's going to be the next episode. And then, as you said earlier, there's an ad for Radio Free Europe. Radio Free Europe needs your help to fight communism. And then there's just an address, Radio Free Europe, Box 1962, Mount Vernon, New York. No zip code.
He didn't need them back then.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy, I guess. I'm very curious if that still exists.
Radio Free Europe does, yes.
If the
if the P.O. box. Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's still,
I wonder.
It can still send stuff. But great episode.
And next week, I know it has a sweet title, but it's not as sweet like this one.
No?
You're like, a piano in the house? It sounds so nice. It's not. It's mean. But it's good.
Mean piano.
I don't remember what happens in it. I just remember that it's not light like this one.
Oh, gotcha. All
Yeah.
right.
All
Looking
right.
forward to it. Thank you, Freddie. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. Sorry, I got a little warning light popped up. I had to take care of it. Then we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Take care.